Namaskar. Am I audible? Thanks to everyone for coming. It's a early Saturday morning, so it's a little difficult to wake up and attend the conference. Okay, I would I would ask a question before I start. How many of you know the genesis of the name Kashmir? Can you raise your hands? Those of you who know. Not many, I would say. Now that's where we where we start. Kashmir comes from Kashyap Rishi, the father or the progenitor of the humans who live in not just Bharatvarsha, but possibly across the globe. All our Gotras come from him. So when people tell us or people tell you, oh, Kashmir, it's a Muslim majority area, it should be given to Pakistan, or if they are seeking independence, why not? The voice of the people is the voice of the God. You should tell them that look at the name Kashmir, it comes from Rishi Kashyap, and it was the fountainhead of Indian civilization. Now, I'm quoting, can we move to the next? I'm quoting Ved Kumari Ghai. Ved Kumari Ghai is a Sanskrit scholar, and she says, and I read it, if we take away the contribution of Kashmir from Sanskrit, little else remains. So that should kind of let us know who we are. In essence, we are all Kashmiris because we all stem from Kashyap Rishis. All our Gotras come from Kashmir. So I would not go into great details, but I can say with pride, and I feel that pride of my generations of forefathers who lived in Kashmir before us, that it was us, it was Kalhana who gave us our first written history in Indian subcontinent. It was Bilhan who wrote those beautiful poems of love which have now been framed into paintings, which is called Chor Panchashika. It was Sharangadev who went from Kashmir to South India, and the classical Carnatic music that we all learn with pride comes from Kashmir. I can say with pride that the greatest scholars of Buddhism, it may seem like an oxymoron to you today, but the greatest scholars of Buddhism came from Kashmir. Kumarji, Nagarjuna, the second Buddhist council was held in Kashmir. So please feel proud of the lineage of which we are, because I essentially said we are all Kashmiris. The second Buddha, Guru Rinpoche, or Padma Sambhava as we call him, the Lotus Sutra was written in Kashmir, and Guru Rinpoche was himself a Kashmiri. All Chi murals come from Kashmir. So Kashmir, in an essence, lives in all of us in our everyday life. Even today, when in South India, Brahmins stand and pray, they face north and say, Namaste Sharada Devi Kashmir Purvasini. So we are essentially, the goddess is Kashmiri in origin, so that is where we come from. I think that should be enough for this regular slide. Now, this genocide has been, a continuous process in Kashmir for almost 800 years now. And since the first Muslim rulers landed in Kashmir, we have faced it. There have been 7 exoduses of Kashmiri Pandits in Kashmir. Those would be, it would be going into too much of detail. But if you read the text, and I ask you, I request you that you read texts, especially texts written by Muslim scholars themselves, because they feel pride in destroying the civilizational ethos of India, because Al-Biruni writes in his book, India, he says there are only 2 places where Hinduism in essence exists, either in Varanasi or in Kashmir. So it was a strategic plan even then to destroy the very essence of what Hinduism stands for, and that is how all these 7 exoduses of Kashmiri Pandits took place. I I would leave you with this thought, and I would request you that you read books like Baharistan Shahi, you read books like Tawfat al-Ahbab, so that you know the kind of barbarianism that was unleashed on Kashmiris, and that is how a lot of people kept moving from Kashmir, and a lot of Saraswat Brahmins traced their lineage back to Kashmir. Now we come to 1989-90. Now all this that had happened prior to 1989, from 1300 to 1989, happened in time of Muslim rulers. It happened when there was no government, there was no constitution, there was no civil society, there were no human rights bodies. But what happened in 1989 happened shamefully, and I say shamefully, in a plural India which feels pride in its civilization, in its multiculturalism, in its multi-religious society, which feels pride of its constitution and its democratic institutions. Yet this poster that you see, I translated it because you couldn't read Urdu. It says, Musalman jago, Musalmano jago, kafiro bago, jihad aa gaya hai, which means Muslims wake up, kafirs, which means Hindus in this case, run away, because jihad is coming to the door next to you. So they pasted posters on our walls, on our doors, asking us to either convert, flee, or be prepared to get killed. This happened in India in 1989. I'll go through this. It may be a little longer, ma'am, so you will have to allow me a couple of minutes more. Prominent Kashmiri Pandits were targeted. They started killing them one by one. And then on October 4, 1989, suddenly one day, thousands of people came into Lal Chowk, and when these, Lal Chowk is the central area of Srinagar. Incidentally, I'll come back to Srinagar one more time, maybe later. Thousands of people came into Lal Chowk, and the slogans were very clearly anti-India, but more so anti-Hindu. They wanted us to leave. They did not want us to live there. There was this concerted effort to put fear into the minds of Kashmiri Hindus. And let me tell you, we were not living in a ghetto. We were not living in one place. Kashmiri Hindus, even you could find the farthest village from Srinagar, and you could find a Kashmiri Pandit living there. So it was very easy to target. We were like sitting ducks. From my own village, we were just 5 Kashmiri Pandit families among 1,000 Kashmiri Muslim families, and many of them had already acquired guns by then. So Hizbul Mujahideen, in a newspaper, issued a threat. The newspaper is called Al Safa. It said Kashmiri Pandits should leave within 24 hours. And in order to make their point, they killed a man called M.L. Ban, not very far from my village. Farooq Ubla, incidentally, when his son today appears on television and gives us sermons about democracy and pluralism, he ran away. He went to London and appeared only when the Indian forces, the Indian security forces, praise be to them, when they brought back order. And this man came back only after he felt secure. Till that time, he lived in London along with his sons and daughters. I'll come to that fateful night. I was 16, and I remember this night. Generally, what would happen we lived in a village, and evening prayers would be said, and Allahu Akbar would go up in the air, and you would know, okay, the village is going to sleep. But this night was different. There was an Allahu Akbar, and I knew the local Maulvi, a nice, pious man, I would say. And suddenly his voice disappeared, and some very, very, very rustic voice started emerging from the speakers of the mosque, and it had some strange songs playing, one of which I remember, and every time I think of it, it comes back to haunt me. It said, the Russians have disintegrated, the Afghans have won. No, not Afghans, the Muslims have won. It's now the turn of India to leave Kashmir. I wish I could, say it in Kashmiri for you. But then the sloganeering went up, because every lane, Every bylane, every street, every corner of Kashmir was filled with people. And there were various, there was Azadi ka matlab kya, la ilaha illallah. I have translated it for you, but I would say it as they came to us. अगर कश्मीर में रहना है अल्लाह अकबर कहना है ए काफिरो ए जालिमो कश्मीर हमारा छोड़ दो but the worst one that really set us thinking about our presence in Kashmir was we want Kashmir without Kashmiri Pandit men but with their women. So they were up to defiling us, they were up to defiling our women. I remember my own mother, my aunts, and we had two small sisters from my aunt. We put them into kitchen and we put a canister of kerosene oil next to them. Said, just in case they come, please burn yourself, because that was the only way left out to us. So after this, most Kashmiri Pandits started packing their bags. They said, enough is enough, we cannot live. There was no government, there was no police. In fact, most of the policemen were on their side. And we read about IS, and suddenly the Western media starts getting, jittery. Oh, they cut somebody's head. This is barbaric. But we had worse. There were people getting chopped on sawmills. There were people whose genitals were mutilated. There were women who were raped, and after being raped, they were cut into small pieces. So this barbarianism that we have seen in those years, in those months, I would say, was far, far worse. It would put a Taliban or an IS to shame, and I will name these people who did this barbarianism. But what was strange was, when people tell you, oh, it was militants, a handful of them came from Pakistan. That's not correct, my dear friends. Every Kashmiri Muslim family, every Kashmiri Muslim, I can, except for a handful among those 40-50 lakh Kashmiri Muslims who lived in Kashmir at that point of time, supported this either overtly or covertly. Today they may tell you that we are moderates, we have nothing to do with this, we follow Islam as a way of life. That's all rubbish. That is bullshit. So please get it right. They were all hand in glove. If they weren't killing you, they were making your life miserable. They were making sure that if not today, then you will leave tomorrow. So please get it right. It wasn't a handful of Muslims. It was a mass aggression. It was a mass that was directed towards you. It was the mass of people who wanted you to leave Kashmir. I'll read it, and I hope you can all read it there. However this war may end, we have won the war against you. None of you would be left to bear witness, but even if someone were to survive, the world would not believe him. That is exactly what they wanted to do to us. They wanted to wipe us out in letter and spirit. They wanted to wipe us out, erase us from the memory of Kashmir, so that even if I would stand here and tell you what happened, you wouldn't believe. Say, oh, it never happened. This quote comes from one of the SS soldiers, a Nazi soldier, and he writes about the concentration camps to which also I am coming. Now, as situation stands today, in 1990, most Kashmiri Pandits, I would say 85 to 90% Kashmiri Pandits had fled Valley by June of 1990. Yet, 450 temples were destroyed after that. All Kashmiri Pandit institutions, schools, centers of learning, or social cultural institutions, they were all razed to dust. They were completely destroyed. More than 10,000 Kashmiri Pandit houses were destroyed. So when they give you the Jagmohan theory and tell you, oh, it wasn't us, Jagmohan planned their exodus, because they keep saying this on the internet, they keep saying this on television, please tell them, did Jagmohan burn these 450 temples? Did Jagmohan burn these educational institutions? Did Jagmohan burn 10,000 Kashmiri Pandit houses? And did he encroach temple land? Did he encroach the houses of Kashmiri Pandits in which a lot of you live today? So please be informed, please read about this, because we are short on information. Now this is Kambaleshwar temple in Srinagar. It's in the center of Srinagar. You can see it for yourself. I don't have to even speak about this. This used to have a murti of Radha and Krishna. Okay, so we were forced to move to camps. These camps were in, again, multicultural, multi-plural, India, religious, this, that, whatever. But these camps had no toilets. These were 10 by 10 tents because government of India did not want the issue to get internationalized. They did not allow international aid, rightly or wrongly, so I do not know. These camps had no electricity, there was no water, there was no privacy, so much so that the growth rate of Kashmiri Pandits was stymied to 14:1. For every 14 deaths, we had one birth because there was no privacy in these tents. And people who got married had to live with 3 generations of other people. This is how it looked then. It's not much better now for people who live there, and for 17 long years, 250,000 people lived in these tents. Now, when they say there are still Kashmiri Pandits living back, tell them only 2650, that is the head count of Kashmiri Pandits who are still left in Valley. And the ones who were left back, who did not move for whatever reasons, either they were too poor to move, or they had land, or they thought maybe we'll survive this one, they faced massacres. I am mentioning only 3, there were 7. Vandhama massacre, there were 23 Kashmiri Pandits killed. There was Sangrampura massacre, and then there was Nadimarg. I'm not going into others because it will take a lot of time. My time is anyways up. But in Vandhama, they killed even a 3-month-old boy. And then they came next morning to say, oh, we'll cremate these bodies because it makes good PR. But this lone survivor in this massacre told my friend Rahul Pandita, who has written this book called Our Moon Has Blood Clots, please, please, please read this book. If you don't want to buy it, please borrow it from me. I'll give you a copy. Please read this book called Our Moon Has Blood Clots. It is a memoir by my friend Rahul Pandita, and it mentions about the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits. So he says to Rahul, he says, when they tell you that we'll cremate, I told them, kisi ko bhi in dead bodies ko haath nahi lagane dena. There's an expletive which I would not use. And because when these people, these terrorists came to kill them, it was Shab-e-Qadr. This is the night in which you spend the night in the mosque. And there were already loudspeakers on in the mosque. They raised the voice of these loudspeakers so that you could muffle the noise coming out of shooting of these bullets. So that is the barbarianism that lives in Kashmiri Muslim mind even today. Now, who are these killers? There are 2 on your screen. I don't know if any one of you knows them, but please do a Google search. One of them is Bitta Karate. He has killed more than 40 Kashmiri Pandits and even 3 Muslims, but he has accepted on tape killing 20 Kashmiri Pandits. He is let off by the Indian government because the prosecution says they could not build a case against them. I have friends here who with me have campaigned a lot to get this man re-arrested and reopen cases, but to no avail. But worse is this man, Yasin Malik. I don't know if you know about him. This man is feted by India today as the youth icon. This man was an IB asset also for some time. I have no shame in saying this, and I'm not afraid of saying this, because IB believed that my time is over. But I must tell you, please understand that this man met Lashkar Chief Hafiz Saeed twice, and no action has been taken by Indian government on him. I leave you with this picture so that you can think about it. Thank you very much for your time and attention.